Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ifeoluwa, and in today's video I'll be showing you guys how to draft and cut a perfect trouser with crop top. So if you've been finding it difficult or you've been having issues with cutting trousers, then this video is for you. I made it as detailed as possible so as to answer every questions on cutting a trouser. So if you are seeing this video and you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do well to subscribe. Leave a comment at the comment section. Feel free to ask questions and also give this video a thumbs up, and let's get started. These are the measurements I'll be needing: my trouser length, the knee length, hip measurements, waist measurements, the round knee, bust measurements, the bust points, under bust, across back, which is the shoulder to shoulder, the armhole, the front waistline, and the back waistline. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is to create a margin at the side and at the upper side. So I'll be coming down by about 3 inches at the upper side. So I'm going to mark 3 inches round and then connect together. So at this side you can also use 3 inches or 2.5 inches. It's just to create a space. We just want to create allowance for what to be drafting later on. So I marked 2.5 like that and I connected together. So now that we have our margins, we are going to go into drafting the trouser properly. So for this trouser I want a high waist trouser, so I'm going to leave 2 inches. I'm going to leave 2 inches for the band. So I'm just going to mark 2 inches from the margin that we created, and I'm going to connect together. So I'm going to be taking all my horizontal measurements starting from this new line I just made so as to avoid confusion. So I'm going to first of all measure my hip depth, which is 8 inches. So 8 is a standard for this hip that I want to work on. Now for the crotch depth, I'm going to be using the hip divided by 4. So the hip is 41 divided by 4, that is 10.25. So I'm going to mark it there and also mark it at the other side and then connect together. So I have my waistline, my hip depth, and my crotch line. So the next thing I'll be doing is to measure out the crotch line. So that crotch line that I want to measure out now is just like taking your hip measurement and dividing it by 4. But in this case I'll be using a stretchy material, so I want it to fit on the body very well. So I'm going to be taking out 2 inches from the hip measurement. I have the hip as 41. I'm going to be using 39 inches. So 39 inches divided by 4 is what I'm going to mark on the waistline and on the hip depth. So I have 39 divided by 4, which is 9.75. So I'm going to connect it down to the crotch line. So I made a mistake here. I'm going to rectify that mistake as we are going on. So this is going to be the center line. So I'm just going to rectify that mistake and I'm going to connect it back to the crotch line. Now I'm going to create a crotch extension for the front. So from this center line towards the outer part of the trouser, I'm going to have a crotch extension. So I'll be using the hip divided by 20. That is for the front. That is the formula for the front. So I have the hip. I'm using the original hip, which is 41, not the 39 inches. So I'm using 41 divided by 20, which is 2.125, and then I'm going to mark it there and connect it back to the center line. The next thing I'm meant to do after this is to create the crease line or the balance line. But before that, let me measure out the knee length and the length, the full length of the trouser. So I'm taking this from the 2 inches that we came down by. So I told you that that is the temporary line we'll be using for now to measure the lines. So this is the knee measurements, the knee length, and then the full length of the trouser. So I'm just going to mark that and then connect the points together. So let me just say this quickly: if you are not using an elastic material, if you are using a material like Ankara fabric or a material that doesn't stretch, so you go ahead to use the original hip that you have without subtracting anything from it. So as this hip is 41, if I were working on if I was to be working on a material that is not elastic, I'm going to use the same 41 all through. So I just want you to note that. I'm going to determine the crease line or the balance line. It is to give balance to the trouser. So from the crotch extension, from the front crotch extension to the margin that we have there, whatever I have there, I'm going to divide it by 2, and I'm going to mark that point at on the crotch line, the knee line, and then the full length of the trouser. So I'm going to mark it there. I'm also going to mark it on the knee line, the knee length, and I'm also going to mark it on the full length of the trouser. So the next thing I want to do is to measure out my waist measurement. So don't forget, I'm taking 2 inches out of the waist and the hip because of the elastic material. So my waist is 34. I had 34 before. I took out 2 inches, so now I'm going to have 32 divided by 4, which is 8 inches, and then I'm going to add 1 inch for that allowance. So I'm going to create the darts now for the front by measuring everything I have here and dividing by 2. So I have 9 divided by 2, which is 4.5, and then I'm going to take ½ inch on both sides. So I'm going to draw out a line and then measure out 5 inches for the darts, for how long I want the darts to be. So I'm going to measure this line and then measure out 5 inches and then connect the darts together. So on the waistline that we measured as 9 inches, I'm going to go up by ½ inch. So I'm going to just square it up like this and go up by ½ inch, and then I'm going to connect that ½ inch to one of the dart legs. So why I'm doing this is just to give the trouser more shape, just to have more shape, to add more shape to the trouser. So I'm going to connect this back to the ½ inch. Then after that, I'm going to connect this waist to the hip depth. So I'm going to connect it like that, straight to the hip depth. So the next thing I'm going to do is to measure out my round knee. So for my round knee measurement, I have 17 inches. So 17 inches divided by 2 is 8.5. So I'm going to share that 8.5 on this knee. So which means you are dividing the 8.5 by 2. So the 8.5 divided by 2 is 4.25. So I'm going to share it equally on the crease line. And then the same thing I have on the knee, I'm going to bring it down on the length because I want it to be straight, not pencil or boot cut. So I'm just going to have the same thing I have on the knee, and I'm going to extend it on the length of the trouser also from the crease line. That is the essence of the crease line, to create balance, so that you will not just measure it from anywhere out of the paper. So you are going to be measuring from the crease line itself. So what we are going to do now is to connect together. So from the crotch line, I'm going to be connecting to the knee line using a straight line, and then from the knee line, I'm going to connect to the hem line, which is the trouser length, also using a straight line. At the other side, I'm also going to connect from the crotch line to the knee line. So I'm not going to be using a straight line for this. I'm going to be using that part of my pattern master to connect it together. Then on the knee line, I'm going to connect with a straight line to the hem line. So I'm just going to blend out this part at the hip. So I'm going to blend it out so that it's not going to look sharp. So it's going to look more curvy. So that is the end of drafting the front pattern. Now to draft the back pattern, I'm also going to be using this front pattern. So just pay attention. I wish I had another color of marker to use, but I just want you to pay enough attention to this. From the center line on the crotch line, I'll be coming in by 0.75, and then on the waistline, I'll be coming in by 2 inches, and then I'm going to connect the points together. So it depends on the hip you are using. So from 45 upwards, you can come in by 1 inch towards on the crotch line. You can come in by 1 inch instead of 0.75. So I'm just going to draw that line and then extend it out like that. This is going to be our new center line for the back. So just note that this is the new center line for the back. So everything we are going to be doing is going to be starting from this new center line. So on the waistline, I'm going to raise it by 1 inch. I'm going to raise that part by 1 inch or 1.5 inches. So it just depends on how big the person's butt is. The reason why we are doing this is so that when you sit the back, you won't be seeing the butt crack at the back when you sit. So you sit comfortably without anything showing. So I'm just going to use 1 inch for this one and connect it. I'm going to measure out the waistline divided by 4 plus 1 inch for that. So don't forget, we are still using the same waistline, the 32 inches, because of the elastic material. So divided by 4, I have 8 inches plus 1 inch for dart allowance, and then I'm going to raise it up by ½ inch, the same way I worked for the front. So but this one I'm just going to connect it straight down like that. I won't be connecting it to the dart leg. So after connecting like that, I'm going to measure out my dart. So the 9 inches that I have here divided by 2, which is 4.5, and then I'm going to take out ½ inch on both sides. And then for the dart leg, for the dart length for this, I'm going to be using 6 inches. You know, I used 5 inches for the front. I'm going to use 6 inches for the back, and then I'm just going to join the lines together. So I'm just going to demarcate this one. This is the back dart, and that is the front dart. So what I'll do next is to create the crotch extension for the back. Now for the crotch extension for the back, I'll be using the new center line of the back. So from the new center line of the back, I'm going to create the crotch extension for the back. So I'm just going to extend this line like this, and then to create the crotch extension, I'll be using the hip, which is the original hip, the way we did for the front, the original hip divided by 10 inches. So I won't be using divided by 20 inches like the front. I'll be using 10 inches. So the original hip, which is 41, divided by 10 inches, so I have 4.1. So I'm just going to mark the 4.1 from the new center line of the back, and then I'm going to connect it to the new center line of the back. So just take note of where you'll be cutting when it's time to cut. Now from the center line on the crotch line, I'm going to be measuring out the hip measurement. So from that point, I'm going to measure out the hip measurement. So I'm still using the 39 inches because of the elasticity of the material. You know, I had 41 inch as the hip. I minused 2 inches, so I'm using 39 inches divided by 4 plus 1 inch for ease. That 1 inch is for the butt to accommodate the butt, so that you'll be able to bend down and do things easily. So from that part, I'm going to measure out the hip plus 1 inch for the allowance. Then whatever I have there, whatever I have on that part, I'm going to note it and then measure it on this hip depth. So I'm going to measure it there, and then I'm going to connect it together. So from the waistline, I'm also going to connect back to this point. Now for the back, I'm going to be adding ½ inch. I'm going to be adding ½ inch on the knee length, from this point on the knee length, and also the other side of the knee length. So I'm going to be adding the ½ inch for ease also. So I'm going to also add it on the hem line, ½ inch, and then I'm going to connect together. So when you are connecting for this, you remember you are using the new crotch extension. You remember you are using that point for the connection from this new crotch extension to the knee line. So I'm just going to blend that out with my French curve. I'm going to blend it out so that we are not going to have any sharp edge on the hip. So this is everything I have for the back. So make sure you cross check and check all your measurements again to be sure that you are doing everything correctly. So this is everything. So what I'm going to do now is to trace out one of them. So you can either trace out the front on another pattern paper, or you trace out the back on another pattern paper. So for this, I chose to trace out the front on another pattern paper. So I'm just going to join it together, and then I'm going to trace it out. So you make sure you are tracing out the right thing for this part. So you just be careful, and then you trace out the right lines. So I'm done tracing it out. Then I'm going to use my marker to highlight everything that I've traced out. So carefully, I'm just going to do that. But the thing is that if you want to practice more of this, if you want to get this more, it's better for you to just draft the front pattern again. So you can just draft the front pattern again instead of tracing out. So this is what I have after tracing it out. So here I'm just cross-checking my measurements to be sure that I have everything as it should be, to be sure that what I traced out is correct. So I'm just cross-checking. Make sure you also cross-check every measurement that you have, because one slight mistake can spoil whatever you are sewing. So I'm cross-checking everything. So I want to create the band for the trouser. So I'm going to fold in these darts. I'm going to fold in the darts like that, and then I'm going to take out 2 inches for the band. After connecting together, I'm going to label it. So this is the front band, so that I won't make mistake and take it as the back band. So this is the front band. Then I'm going to label the crotch side and then the side seam of the trouser. So I have everything ready. I'm going to proceed to cut it out now. Now I'm also going to cut out the back. So you already know that we have traced out the front already from this. So this is the next thing the only thing we have left here is just to cut out the back pattern. So I'm also going to create the band for the back pattern. So I'm going to close up the dart area and then I'm going to measure out 2 inches for the band. So that is all on how to cut a trouser. So all you just need is patience and practice to understand how a trouser works. So let's move on to the crop top. The first thing I'm going to do is to take the chest line measurement, which is the armhole divided by 2. So I have my armhole as 16 inches, so divided by 2 I'll take 8 inches. Then my bust point, the under bust, and then the front waistline. So I'll take the same measurement at the other side and I'm going to connect them together. So the next thing I'm going to do is to create my armhole, which is my across back divided by 2. So I have 7.5 for this. I'm going to measure it on the shoulder line and the chest line, and then I'm going to connect it together. Then from the shoulder line I'm going to come down by 1 inch, and then whatever I have left I'm going to divide by 2. And then I'm going to measure out my bust measurement on the chest line, which is the bust divided by 4. I'm going to measure it there. And then on the midpoint of the armhole, I'm going to go in by 0.75. So I'm going to connect those 3 points together using my French curve. Next thing I'm going to do is to measure the nipple to nipple point. I have 4 inches for this, 8 inches divided by 2, which is 4 inches. So I'm going to measure it like that. And then I'm going to connect the line together. I'm just going to label this for easy access. So this is my chest line, this is the bust point, the under bust, and then the waistline. Then this side is going to be the center front and the other side is going to be the side front. Now towards the center front I'm going to be coming in by 0.5 inch, and then towards the side front I'll be coming out by 1.5 inches. So I'm going to do the same thing for the under bust, and then I'm going to join those points together. So the next thing I'll do is to connect with my French curve from the under bust to the bust point. I'm going to connect together like that, and then I'm just going to create a neck measurement just for creating sake, because we are not going to need this. So I just measured out my neck width and my neck depth, and then I connected together. Then I joined my shoulder slants together. Now on the shoulder slant you are going to figure out the midpoint. Now from that midpoint I'm going to connect it to my bust point. The next thing we are going to do is to figure out where the neckline is going to stop. So it depends on how deep you want the neckline to be. So for this one I'm going to make it 7 inches. I don't want the chest to be too exposed. Then on the armhole I'm going to take about 5 inches. So from the armhole I'm going to connect to the neckline using my French curve. So I'm going to be using a sweetheart neckline for that. Now from the armhole I'm going to connect it back into the chest line, since we are not going to be putting sleeves. So I'm going to connect it into the chest line like that. Now I'm going to tighten around the neckline to prevent gaping on the top. So I'm taking 0.5 inch towards the center front and then 1 inch towards the side front. So I'm going to connect that to the bust point. Now whatever I have there I'm going to replace it back to the bust measurements, so that the bust you won't be short of anything at the bust. So I'm going to replace it back there. And then for the waist measurements I'm going to divide the waist measurements by 4, and then I'm going to add whatever I also have there, and I'm going to replace it back on the waist measurement, and then I'm going to connect the points together, and then I'm going to draw a new armhole. I'm going to connect it back to the new chest line. So by the time you want to sew, you will notice that this part of the neckline won't be equal. So before you get to that point, you're just going to cover it up here. You're going to replace whatever you have there, and you're going to cover it up here on the pattern paper before cutting it on the clothes. So you see that space there, we are going to replace it and draw out a new neckline using the French curve. Now the front waistline is 17 and the back waistline is 15, which is not the same. So you are going to minus that 17 minus 15, that is 2 inches, and then you are going to take that 2 inches at the side front on the bust point, and then you connect it back into the bust point. So I'm just going to blend that part out using the French curve, and then I'm going to cut out what I have. So this part I'm trying to note what I have, so that by the time I want to cut out the spaghetti straps, the straps for the top, I'm going to have accurate measurements. So I have 4.5, so I'm just going to note it there, and then I'm going to cut out what I have. Now for the back, we are going to measure out the zip allowance. I used 1 inch, so I'm going to measure out the zip allowance, and then I'm going to connect together. So I'm going to measure out my chest line and the waistline. So my chest line is 8 inches, and then my back waistline is 15 inches. So I'm going to measure it in that side too, and I'm going to connect together. Then I'll create my armhole. So my cross back divided by 2, I'm going to measure it there, and I'm also going to measure it on the chest line, and then I'm going to join. Then I'm going to come down by 1 inch, and then whatever I have left, I'm going to divide by 2, and then from this point I'm going to come in by 0.5 inches. Then on the chest line, I'm going to measure out the chest, the bust measurements divided by 4, and then I'm going to connect those points together. Now on the waistline, we are going to go in by 1 inch for the zip allowance. So we are going to go in by 1 inch, and then from that 1 inch, I'm going to take the waist measurements divided by 4 plus 1 inch for that. Then I'm going to connect together. Now this is going to be our new zip allowance. So I'll be taking the dart from the original line. So I'll be using my nipple to nipple, which is 4 inches. So I have 4, and then I'm going to take 0.5 at both sides. Then on the chest line, I'm also going to take the 4 inches, and then I'm going to connect them together. And then I'll create the neckline for the back. So I'm going to be using the same 5 inches I used for the front on the armhole, and then for this part you can also use 5 inches, or you can come down and use any inch you want, but the armhole should remain the same. Then I'm going to connect them together. So to also prevent gaping at the back, I'm going to extend the dart's leg. I'm going to extend it to the neckline for the back, and then I'm going to take 0.5 inches on both sides, so which is, I have 1 inch altogether. So I'm just going to take that and connect it back to the dart. Then I'm going to connect the armhole to the chest line. So I want to create my my neckline here, so I can know where how many inches I'll be taking for the strap, and then you can proceed to cut out. So this is all on the drafting and the cutting of a trouser and a cropped top. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please do not forget to subscribe to my channel, and also give this video a thumbs up. So you can ask me any questions you want to ask me in the comment section, and I'll be there to answer all your questions. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.